Everyone in the bank stopped moving when Marcus placed his withdrawal slip on the counter. The banker's smirk was loud enough to echo through the marble hall. $1 million? She repeated, almost laughing. The man she mocked had once washed her car for minimum wage. But today, he owned the company that signed her paycheck. Atlanta was barely awake when Marcus Green pulled on his faded hoodie and stepped into the crisp morning air. The streets still glistened from last night's rain, and somewhere in the distance, a MARTA train screeched its way into downtown. He tightened the straps of his old backpack, the one with a tiny tear at the corner, and started his walk toward Brightway Car Wash, where he'd been scrubbing tires and hoods for nearly 4 years. The city was alive but merciless. Rent was high, gas prices never stayed the same, and food costs climbed faster than his paychecks. Yet Marcus moved like a man with purpose, tired but not broken. He worked 3 jobs, mornings at the car wash, afternoons delivering takeout across Midtown, and nights guarding a construction site on the edge of town. Every dollar mattered. Every tip, every bonus mile, every shift counted toward something bigger, though no one quite knew what that something was except him. By 7:45 a.m., the car wash buzzed with its usual rhythm, the hum of pressure hoses, the thump of bass-heavy music from someone's speaker, and the occasional laughter from the other workers. Marcus, in his late 20s, but already showing lines of exhaustion under his eyes, moved like he was born for this, efficient, quiet, methodical. He'd never complain, never gossip, never show anger. Even when the Georgia heat boiled the pavement or the chemicals burned his skin, Marcus stayed steady. "Yo, Marcus, that white BMW's back again," called Terrence, his co-worker, grinning mischievously. "You know what that means." Marcus didn't need to look up. He knew the car. The spotless pearl-white BMW 5 Series rolled in like it owned the place, probably because its owner acted like she did. Victoria Price stepped out, perfume thick in the air, heels clicking sharply on the wet concrete. She was in her early 30s, dressed like someone who lived in a world far from the grit and sweat around her. Banker, probably corporate, the kind who never missed an opportunity to remind you she was better than you. She took off her sunglasses and scanned Marcus like a manager inspecting an employee. "Make sure you don't leave streaks on the hood this time," she said, smirking. "Last time, it looked like someone washed it with a broom." Her tone was light, playful, but Marcus heard the blade underneath. He just nodded. "Yes, ma'am. I'll make sure it's spotless." She gave him a long look, the kind that made him feel like a background prop in someone else's movie, then turned back to her phone. Terrence shot Marcus a look that said, "Man, she's testing you again." Marcus simply smiled faintly. "Some people got noise where silence should be," he said quietly. Then he got back to work. As he scrubbed the BMW's wheels, he caught sight of his reflection in the chrome, the same tired face, but behind it, something alive. He wasn't angry. He was patient, and patience, to him, wasn't weakness. It was strategy. When Victoria climbed back into her spotless BMW and rolled down the window to hand him a crumpled $5 bill, she said with a teasing grin, "Don't spend it all in one place, Marcus." He nodded again. "Thank you, ma'am. You have a blessed day." She didn't notice the faint glimmer in his eyes, not resentment, not envy, just quiet calculation. That night, Marcus sat in his one-room apartment, a simple space with a single bulb, a worn-out couch, and a little corkboard filled with goals. The rent receipts were neatly pinned in a row. Beside them, a sticky note read, "Save 70% of everything. Future Marcus will thank you." He had no fancy degrees, no family wealth, no shortcuts. But he had habits, the kind of habits that, if you held them long enough, became destiny. After a quick shower, he opened his old laptop. The cracked screen glowed faintly as he logged into his bank app. $6,432.17, the most he'd ever had. He smiled. Then, as if by chance, he saw something pinned to the notice board at work earlier that day. A colorful flyer about micro-investment opportunities in startups. Own a piece of tomorrow. It had seemed ridiculous at the time. Guys like him didn't invest, they survived. But something about those words lingered. He pulled the flyer out of his backpack now and studied it under the dim light. The edges were smudged, but the message was clear. He leaned back, eyes thoughtful. Outside, the city hummed. The same city that mocked dreamers, yet somehow built its skyline on them. Marcus whispered to himself, maybe it's time to own a piece of tomorrow. And for the first time that week, he smiled not because he was polite, but because, deep down, he knew his story wasn't going to end where it started. It started small, almost invisible. Every night after his shift at the construction site, Marcus would lean against the security booth, sipping gas station coffee and scrolling through articles on his cracked phone. He wasn't on Instagram or TikTok like most of his co-workers. His feed was filled with names and numbers no one else cared about. Warren Buffett, index funds, compound interest, startup equity. At first, it didn't make much sense. Stocks, shares, dividends. It was like another language. But Marcus had always been a quick learner. He started watching free YouTube videos between deliveries, reading PDFs he found on Reddit about how people built wealth from nothing. By the end of the month, he could explain what a bull market was better than most college graduates. He started keeping a small notepad in his pocket. Inside, he'd write things like, don't chase fast money. Let your money chase growth. Save 70%. Invest 20%. Live on 10%. No one saw that notebook, not even Terrence from the car wash, who called him Professor Marcus for always reading boring money stuff. Then one afternoon, while cleaning up spilled soap near the vacuum lane, Marcus overheard two customers talking. One man said, yeah, the government's pushing for new energy laws. Green stuff. Solar panels, electric grids, all that. If you get in early, you're golden. Marcus didn't know what getting in early meant, but that night, he found out. He stumbled across a small article online. Asterisk Green Tech Solutions seeking early investors. Asterisk it was a tiny startup working on sustainable home batteries. Most people ignored it. The stock price hovered at $1.05, practically worthless. But something about the idea pulled at him. That week, after bills and rent, Marcus had about $5,000 left, his emergency savings. Every sensible voice in his head screamed, don't do it. But another voice, softer, calmer, said, maybe this is what you've been preparing for. So he opened a brokerage account. He used the alias MLS, short for his late mother's maiden name, just in case things went south. He didn't want his real name attached to a stupid mistake. When he hit buy, his heart thumped so hard he could hear it echo in his ears. He didn't sleep much that night. For the next few months, his investment sank. From $1.05 to $0.82, then 60 cents. His $5,000 turned into $3,000. He'd stare at the numbers on his screen and feel a dull ache in his chest. You should have just kept saving, he'd think. But Marcus didn't pull out. He'd read something in a book that stuck with him. Wealth isn't made when everyone's excited. It's made when everyone's afraid. So he waited. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. He kept working, kept saving. He bought no new clothes, no new phone, no car. People laughed when he said he still took the bus. By the end of the first year, the company's stock was still crawling. But Marcus noticed something. They were still alive, still releasing updates, still pushing forward. That told him one thing. Faith mattered. 3 years later, the morning news changed everything. A headline scrolled across the TV in the security booth. President signs major clean energy bill. Green Tech Solutions among first approved contractors. Marcus froze. Coffee slipped from his hand, splattering across the floor. He rushed to his phone and opened his investment app. $1.05 had become $115. He blinked, thinking it was an error. But no, it was real. His $5,000 investment was now worth $7.3 million. For the first time in years, Marcus had to sit down. His body trembled, not from excitement, but disbelief. He thought about every late shift. Every night, he skipped dinner just to save an extra 20. It all came rushing back, the struggle, the laughter, the quiet discipline no one noticed. He didn't shout. He didn't post online. He just whispered, "Thank you, Mama," into the still air. Then, like it was nothing special, he put his phone away and clocked out. Life didn't change overnight. He still went to work the next morning, still washed cars, Still delivered takeout. No one suspected a thing. When Victoria Price pulled into the car wash that Friday, she gave him her usual smirk. "Still here, Marcus? You should really aim higher." He smiled faintly. "I'm working on it, ma'am." She laughed, oblivious. Marcus turned away, hiding the small, knowing grin that crept across his face, because she still saw him as the car wash guy, and he was perfectly fine with that. He had learned something that day. Silence was more powerful than showmanship. And sometimes, the richest man in the room was the one who said the least. The day was bright, warm, and quiet, the kind of morning that makes even the city's noise feel softer. Marcus stood outside Sterling First Bank, hands in the pockets of his clean gray jacket. He looked ordinary, dark jeans, a white t-shirt, and the same calm expression he always wore. But beneath that quiet exterior, something powerful simmered. He'd spent 3 years watching his savings grow into something he could barely comprehend. He'd opened accounts, diversified investments, paid off his mother's old debts, even donated quietly to 2 local shelters. But he had never touched a dime for himself. Today wasn't about spending. It was about seeing how the world would look at him now that the numbers beside his name had changed. When the glass doors whooshed open, a familiar scent of air conditioning and floor polish met him. Inside, the marble floor gleamed, and the hum of polite voices filled the hall. Behind the counter stood a woman he hadn't seen in a long time, Victoria Price, her blonde hair tucked perfectly behind one ear, her posture sharp, her tone sharper. Her nameplate now read Senior Teller. Marcus stepped forward quietly and joined the line. When his turn came, she looked up with her practiced customer service smile, then froze for a fraction of a second. "Marcus," she said, her tone sliding between surprise and mild amusement. "Well, look who it is. Still washing cars. Or did you finally get promoted to manager?" He smiled politely. "Good morning, Miss Price. I'm here to make a withdrawal." Her eyebrows lifted. "A withdrawal? Sure thing. How much are we talking?" Marcus slipped a neatly folded withdrawal slip across the counter. She opened it, glanced down, and then blinked, as if she'd read it wrong. Her lips twitched. "Excuse me, you wrote $1 million?" "Yes, ma'am," he said calmly. The words seemed to echo. A few heads turned nearby. Victoria chuckled, softly at first, then louder. $1 million? Marcus, this isn't a prank show, right?" She glanced over her shoulder at a co-worker. "Hey, Jordan, you gotta see this. He says he wants to withdraw $1 million. Her co-worker, a young teller with nervous eyes, gave Marcus a cautious glance and tried to smile. But Marcus didn't flinch. "It's not a joke. The funds are in my account. You can verify them." Victoria crossed her arms, the laugh lines hardening around her mouth. "Sir, I think you're confused. We can't just hand out $1 million to anyone who walks in off the street. I mean, come on. Even you have to admit this sounds absurd." Her tone had shifted now, condescending but with a hint of embarrassment. The kind people use when they think they're protecting themselves from being fooled. "Could you please check my account, ma'am?" Marcus said, his voice steady. She sighed, tapping her keyboard, rolling her eyes slightly. "All right, let's humor you for a second." Seconds later, her fake smile froze. Her monitor displayed more zeros than she'd ever seen tied to a name, like Marcus Green. Her pulse quickened, but she quickly minimized the screen and forced a laugh. "Must be a system glitch. No way this is right." "Maybe you should call your manager," Marcus suggested quietly. She stiffened. "Mr. Coleman is out of town. And honestly, Marcus, I think it's best if you leave before this becomes a scene." He met her eyes, not angry, not pleading, just steady. "A scene? Yes," she said, lowering her voice. "I've seen scams like this before. You people come in with fake checks, fake accounts." The words hit him like a slap. Not loud, but sharp. He inhaled slowly, placed his ID and bank card on the counter. "You can verify it yourself," he said softly. Victoria hesitated, then waved at security, a polite signal, but loaded with assumption. "Sir, I'm going to ask you to leave," the security guard said, voice unsure. Marcus gathered his things calmly. "No problem." He glanced once more at Victoria. "You know, Miss Price, life's funny. Sometimes the same water you use to wash someone's car ends up washing away your own reflection." She frowned, confused, but Marcus was already walking out. The sunlight hit him as he stepped back onto the sidewalk, a strange mix of humiliation and peace swirling in his chest. He didn't raise his voice, didn't curse. He just walked away quietly, head high, while the glass doors closed behind him with a hiss, sealing inside a moment that neither of them would ever forget. That night, Marcus didn't sleep. He wasn't angry. He was focused. He opened his laptop, logged into the bank's website, and found the contact email for Mr. Thomas Jameson, regional manager of Sterling First Bank. His fingers hovered above the keyboard. Then calmly, he began to type. The cursor blinked on Marcus's laptop screen like a heartbeat in the dark. The hum of the ceiling fan filled the silence as he read and reread the email he drafted to Mr. Thomas Jameson, the regional manager of Sterling First Bank. He wasn't the type to complain. Life had taught him to swallow pride and keep going. But tonight felt different. He took a deep breath and typed slowly, every word deliberate. Subject * concern regarding customer treatment at Sterling First Bank, Midtown Branch. Good evening, Mr. Jameson. My name is Marcus Green, an account holder at your Midtown branch for the past 7 years. Today, I experienced something that I feel you should be aware of. During a withdrawal request, a senior teller named Victoria Price publicly mocked and dismissed my transaction, assuming I was fraudulent based solely on appearance. I was escorted out despite having legitimate funds. I am not angry, only disappointed. I believe in dignity and fairness, and I would not want this to happen to anyone else. Kindly verify my account details and see for yourself. I'll await your response. Respectfully, Marcus Green. He read it twice, adjusted the tone. Not bitter, not vengeful, just calm truth. Then he hit send. When the confirmation sound pinged, Marcus leaned back in his chair. He didn't expect much. Maybe the message would get lost in corporate noise. Maybe no one would care. But at least he'd said his piece. He turned off the laptop, whispered a quiet prayer, and went to sleep. The next morning, his phone rang at exactly 9:12 a.m. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "Mr. Green," a warm, composed voice said. "This is Thomas Jameson, regional manager of Sterling First Bank. Do you have a moment to speak?" Marcus sat up instantly. "Yes, sir. Good morning." "Good morning," Jameson said. "First, allow me to apologize personally for what happened at our Midtown branch yesterday. I received your email late last night and reviewed your account first thing this morning." There was a pause. Marcus could almost hear the man exhale softly. "Mr. Green, I must say, your portfolio speaks for itself. I've confirmed your assets across multiple divisions, and I'll admit, I was surprised. We owe you a great deal more respect than you were given." Marcus said nothing, just listened. "Please," Jameson continued, "allow me to make this right. I'd like to invite you to a private meeting at the branch tomorrow morning. I'll personally oversee your transaction and ensure you're treated with the respect you deserve. My sincerest apologies for Ms. Price's behavior. It will be addressed." Marcus's tone was steady. "Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time." "See you at 10 sharp," the manager replied, his voice almost reverent. Across town, in the sleek Midtown office of Sterling First, Victoria Price was sipping her latte when her desk phone rang. "Miss Price," the voice of the branch assistant said, a hint of tension in her tone. "Mr. Jameson from corporate just called. He's flying in tomorrow morning. He asked that all senior staff, including you, be present for a client meeting at 10. Victoria raised an eyebrow. "A client meeting? With corporate involved? What's this about?" "I'm not sure," the assistant said, nervous. "But it sounded important." Victoria smiled faintly, brushing it off. "Probably some investor audit. Whatever. I'll be ready." That evening, Marcus polished his shoes, not expensive ones, just clean and simple. He ironed his shirt, pressed his slacks, and laid them out on the bed. He looked around his apartment, the one bedroom that had seen his worst nights and his quiet victories. On the table lay the same coffee mug, the same worn notebook, and the same man who had once scrubbed tires under George's summer sun. He opened that notebook again. On the first page, beneath the faded ink, were the same words he'd written years ago. Save. Build. Wait. He smiled, tapping the page gently. I waited, he whispered. The next morning, downtown Atlanta shimmered with sunlight bouncing off the glass towers. Outside the bank, luxury cars glided past. The same kind of world that once laughed at him. But this time, Marcus wasn't walking in with uncertainty. He wasn't there to prove anything. He was there to be seen. Inside the boardroom upstairs, Mr. Thomas Jameson adjusted his tie and turned to his assistant. When Mr. Green arrives, make sure he's escorted straight in. And please have Miss Price join us. I think it's time she learned the meaning of professionalism. Victoria, sitting at her desk downstairs, checked her reflection in her phone screen and smiled, still unaware that her entire world was about to shift. The next morning, the city of Atlanta woke up to another humid sunrise, the kind that made even wealth feel heavy. But for Marcus Green, it was a morning unlike any other. The air felt cleaner. The weight he had carried for years, the looks, the mockery, the assumptions, had evaporated overnight. At exactly 10 a.m., a sleek black SUV rolled to a stop in front of Sunbank Plaza, the same glass building where he had once stood humiliated. The car door opened, and Marcus stepped out, not in designer wear or flashy jewelry, but in a sharp charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, and quiet confidence. Waiting at the entrance was Mr. Jameson, the regional manager himself, flanked by two senior staff members. He extended his hand with a firm smile. "Mr. Green," he said respectfully, "thank you for coming in. Please, this way." The moment Marcus walked through the glass doors, the entire banking floor seemed to pause. The clicking of keyboards slowed. Conversations hushed. People turned to look. The man they had once laughed at, whispered about, and pitted, was now being escorted personally by corporate leadership. Behind one of the counters, Victoria Price was helping a customer when she looked up and froze mid-sentence. The color drained from her face. Her once perfect smile faltered. She blinked twice, as if her eyes were playing tricks. "Is that?" she murmured under her breath. Marcus caught her gaze for a brief second, but didn't flinch. He simply nodded, polite but distant. The same man she had mocked for years now walked past her, flanked by executives, toward the private client office she had only ever dreamed of entering. Inside the glass-walled meeting room, Mr. Jameson gestured for Marcus to sit. "We reviewed your portfolio," he began carefully. "Frankly, sir, it's extraordinary. You've made investment decisions that some of our top clients would envy." Marcus smiled faintly. "I just stayed patient," he said quietly. "Did my research." Mr. Jameson nodded. "I also want to apologize personally for how you were treated yesterday. It was unacceptable. We take matters like this very seriously." Outside the office, Victoria's curiosity got the better of her. She tried to hover near the hallway, pretending to be busy filing documents. But when she overheard Mr. Jameson mention Marcus's name, followed by the word millionaire, her stomach twisted. Minutes later, the HR manager and a security officer walked up behind her. "Victoria Price," the HR manager said formally. "You're needed in conference room 2. She followed them, her pulse racing. When she stepped into the room, her heart sank. Marcus was sitting there, calm and unbothered, while Mr. Jameson spoke. "Victoria," he said sternly, "Mr. Green here brought to our attention the events that occurred yesterday. We reviewed the security footage and multiple witness accounts." She tried to interrupt. "Sir, I was just following protocol." "No," Mr. Jameson cut in. "Protocol does not include public humiliation or mockery. You treated a verified client, one of our largest asset holders, with disrespect." Victoria's voice trembled. I didn't know who he was." Marcus finally spoke, his tone even and gentle. "That's the point. You shouldn't have to." The silence in the room was deafening. Victoria's eyes filled with tears as the HR manager slid a paper across the table. "You're being released from your position effective immediately." Marcus stood, buttoned his jacket, and extended his hand toward Mr. Jameson. "Thank you for your professionalism," he said calmly. Then, turning to Victoria, he added softly, "We all learn lessons in different ways. I hope yours makes you kinder next time." He walked out. No bitterness, no arrogance, just quiet peace. As he exited the building, the same security guard from yesterday saluted him awkwardly. Marcus smiled, handed him a folded $100 bill, and said, "Thank you for doing your job." The SUV door opened again. He got in, the city skyline reflecting off the tinted glass as the car pulled away. In the distance, the glass tower of Sunbank faded from view, just another chapter behind him. Don't ever judge someone by where you meet them, because the same man you mock today may be the reason you get fired tomorrow. For more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share.